What does a guy got to do to get an assist around here?
Seriously.
Like,
I mean,
Hello, y'all. We'll be starting very, very soon. Just updating y'all to ask if the audio is fine. Can y'all hear everything clearly? So just let me know in the chat if that is fine. And then we'll get right into today's episode. Okay, I see load saying it's better than last time. That's for sure. Awesome, awesome. All right, get into it then. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 1 of the Creative Minds podcast. If you don't know already, I'm Ram. I'll be the host for today's episode and for the podcast. So before we get into it, the schedule of events for today's stream and just the episodes of the podcast in general, it's going to be in 3 segments. The first segment is going to be, general greetings, icebreakers, openings, and stuff of that nature. The second segment, which is going to be where all the juice is going to be, and that's going to be where we present like the interviews and casual talk. So I'll ask the guests some questions. We'll talk about some topics and just have some good conversation, overall. And the third segment that's going to close off every episode is going to be with the closing remarks. We're going to have the wrap ups, the final statements, and of course, we have to be humble. So I'm going to give a lot of thank yous around the board, right? So yeah, hoping to just have a good time, explore the minds of the creators that we have here in EORC, all right? In the chat, the address is pinned if you want to join us in the game. Just come vibe with us and have a good time. Um, Today's guest is going to be none other than Astra, and I'm very excited to have him on here. He's been one of those creators that kind of just wows us for each build, so the fact that I can have him on here as the first guest, to kind of set the tone. So no pressure to him, but a lot of pressure to him, right? So Astra, hi, how are you today?
Hi, Ram. I'm doing pretty good. Excited to be
Happy,
here.
happy to hear that. So, what are your thoughts? What are your expectations? From this experience. Is there anything that you're looking forward to in particular? Maybe.
I think some of the questions that you could offer are pretty good. A lot of questions in housing relate to the community and both housing itself. Um, Housing in itself is a very artistic and creative endeavor, and that's why I'm here and why I do it. So I feel like there's a lot of topics we can talk about.
Absolutely, and I agree, right? But before we get into that, just go on and tell us a little bit more about yourself. Like what made you get into 14, a little bit of possibly what you do outside of 14. Just give us an insider in the mind of and lifestyle of Astra. Who is Astra?
All right. So as for how I got into 14, I used to be a very big mobile game player. I was pretty like addicted to that stuff. I don't play it much anymore, and 14 is like part of the reason why I don't play mobile games as much. I used to play a game called Grand Blue Fantasy, very grindy, almost MMO like basically. And then I started playing shooters like Destiny 2, which is also kind of MMO. So I was kind of already playing an MMO without really knowing what an MMO was. And then eventually, I've always been a fan of Final Fantasy. So I hear that Final Fantasy 14 is a thing, and it's like an MMO, a traditional MMO almost. And I've never played
Mm-hmm.
like WoW or anything like that. So I decided to give it a try. Um, ARR was pretty rough to get through, but then Heaven's Ward hit, Stormblood, Shadowbringers, pretty awesome. And then as for getting into housing from 14, I got a house when you could still like massively spam a placard,
Oh,
and got a
memories.
small, yeah, and then got a small, upgraded to a medium, and then eventually a large. Thankfully, I'm on Crystal mainly, which means that there's not as much competition compared to like Primal or Aether. So, in a way, I'm just like, oh no, I'm on Crystal, but I love Crystal, so and it worked out to my benefit. So, as for what I do in real life, currently, not employed. I got my degree in biology, molecular biology, and I'm seeking to go into school for interior design or architecture. I'm applying right now because I found out
Oh,
through
fancy.
I found I found out through 14 Housing that I really like creative endeavors. When you're in like a field like science or biology, there's not really much creativity. It's all protocol and memorization. In school, at least. In work, it's probably a little bit different, but it's really wasn't hitting it right for me. I decided that lab work really wasn't the thing that I wanted to do. So after doing 14 Housing, I was like, I always been an artistic child. So
Mm-hmm.
doing this, I was like, I really like doing this. I like thinking about this. I like analyzing. I'm using the analyzing I've learned in sciences. And yeah, here's where I am now. I'm just designing FF14 houses. Crazy.
You know, it's funny that you started out on mobile gaming, and the mobile game had fantasy in it, and then you transitioned to PC or console, but depending on what you play on, PC, I'm assuming.
PC, yeah.
And it also has fantasy in it. So I don't know, Astra. Sounds like you have a thing for fantasy.
Well, Grand Blue Fantasy is fairly well aligned into like Final Fantasy because they got the artist of like FF Tactics to base their art style. So, and there's
Mm-hmm.
always been a little of overlap because Grand Blue Fantasy's music comes from Nobuo Uematsu. So it's very overlapping the two games in a way with the artists that are involved with it.
Gotcha. That makes sense. You also raid in 14, right? You're a raider?
Correct. Yeah, I've done 3 ultimates. I've done all the raid tiers since Shadowbringers came out. Since I'm a Shadowbringers baby. Yeah,
Awesome. Okay,
I
so I
love
want to
raiding.
ask you something. I want to ask you something.
Mm-hmm.
So you're a raider and you're housing design, right?
Yep.
So if housing had mechanics from rating, what do you think that us as designers would struggle the most with if one of them was implemented?
Do you want me to like mention a mechanic in a raid and then apply it to
Yeah, a
housing, or
mechanic
like?
that's in game, yes. So if housing had one of those mechanics involved, what do you think us designers might not enjoy that much?
Um. Hmm.
So like you
The
can
hardest.
compare like floating,
Yeah.
floating for example, to one of them or something like that.
Doing the hardest mechanic of a fight is doing the first 2 minutes of the fight over and over again to get to a further part of the fight. So for us, it's like trying to like putting down a white rectangular partition and then slowly floating it every single time we want to get it floated. The same thing. It's painful for the first 30 seconds, and then you just keep doing it repeatedly.
That is true. That is true. Because I remember like around the first times, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe that there's people who actually like do this. And then I think I saw someone post a screenshot and they were using like multiple Rivera wall shells, right? And I was
Yep.
like, oh my God, this is kind of smart. So I started, using multiple different floating options. So I would use like 10 Rivera wall shells, 5 wooden logs, because I just wasn't going to do it one by one. And I felt like it makes it go by easier. I look at people who use one and I'm like, you're crazy. Like, I don't trust you as a person. Like, there's something shady going on with you.
There's new tech now with the what's the table called? The table that the rough wooden table that's a circle. There's the tech
The
with that
wooden
now
real one,
because
I think.
yeah, the wooden real one, that thing. There's new tech now. I can get it really fast. I don't
I'm
remember.
kind of old school. I
Yeah,
like
that
I
one it
like
just lets
having
you
my
float it really
turtles.
fast because you can just kind of like spam it and it goes up.
I like my shells. if I'm being honest.
I use
You mentioned
ops.
that.
I'm weird.
I mean, lots of work. I think it depends on the size of the item, right? Like
It
if you
does,
want more
yes. Yeah, yeah,
surface area, definitely
yeah.
go for the lofts. You mentioned that you want to pursue that creative um, style IRL, and that actually answered one of the questions I wanted to ask you later on, because I wanted to ask when was the first time that you realized that you were a creative person, and I think 14 helped you with that, right?
14 helped me with that. Like I said, I was always kind of a creative person as a child. I would always try to draw in my sketchbook, like imitate whatever I see. I'm a very much a still life drawer as a child. And in my teenage years, I did pixel art because I was big into Fire Emblem, the game series, and I was actually into ROM hacking and kind of like making your own game and type of stuff. So because of that stuff, I had to learn how to do pixel art. I had to learn how to code within the engine that was provided for ROM hacking. I learned a lot of stuff like that, especially the pixel art side. I should do pixel art more, but yeah.
Gotcha. I feel like for me, I don't know, like my start in terms of like being creative, I write IRL. A lot of people, I don't really tell people this, but I do write rap music and I have a passion for it, just writing songs and like pushing my limits in terms of like the bars that you would create. Because I think even songwriters have some good quote unquote bars with the lyrics that they write. And then I found 14, and when I realized that, okay, growing up, my peers would be watching Disney Channel or Nickelodeon. That was popular at the time for us. But me, I was that one person. No, I want to watch HGTV. That's probably like my most watched channel. And they never understood why, because it's like I was never introduced to that type of interior design. My parents don't do it. My family, no one in my family does anything in that sense of creativity. They're more so sportsy. They work in the office type jobs and stuff like that. But me, I've always been that. The saying that goes, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I think I defined that.
Yeah.
I defy that saying because it didn't apply to me. I think I felt pretty far, from the tree. And then when I found the housing community, I was just like, oh my God, I can actually create some of the stuff that I saw on TV. Growing up, I wanted to be a property brother so bad, and now I'm
Yeah.
actually designing people's properties to some extent. So, I guess it kind of worked out in the end.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I never honestly thought that I would be doing like interior design / architecture like this when I was doing artistic stuff in like high school, middle school. It was always like vectors, Photoshop, animation, but never in school. They never talk about stuff like interior design, architecture. You kind of have to find that yourself. They don't really reveal it to you as like a thing you could possibly do. It's yeah. So like now when I do it, I make a house design according to what a client wants or what I want, and then the client is so happy. You start taking G poses immediately. There's something that hits just like right with that.
And I'm happy you said that, because with this podcast, I do hope to have some G posers as well on here, because I feel like the two communities are so intertwined. Like we have G post studios, and they're using housing to create those studios, right? Not only
Mm-hmm.
that, but the same way that we would use, like, for example, lighting for ambience. Um,
Yep.
they use ambient lighting to get different moods and tones with their set. So I do like that aspect of it. I think housing overall has so much more to offer, right? Like it goes beyond face value, like in terms of like the processes that we use and the way that it starts with the research, I think. Like we be
Yes.
researching so much to find so much different things to implement in game, and it's just like, oh my God, is this actually possible?
A lot of the work in housing, even if you're setting up a studio, comes from research of either other people's housing work, real life housing and architecture. Even in the case of like studios that are trying to imitate or like create a specific look, they need to research how their lighting works and then translate it into how the engine works. For us housing people that are making specific themed stuff, we gotta look up the theme. For me, I look up the origin of the theme, especially if I'm doing, like, for example, my Amarot build. I ran around Amarot and Academia Iander and Catesis, look for all those little tiny things. You just gotta do your research. Most of the work, once you get, like, as a good housing person, comes from the research, not really the floating. The floating takes a lot of work too, and like the placement and everything.
Too much work.
But but the research is where I personally take the longest.
For sure. So that kind of brings me. So we're gonna jump into the second segment, right? So this is.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna put you on the spot because for y'all who don't know, Astra. So we were working on my personal, right? And he was one of my helpers in terms of like brainstorming ideas and stuff. And he was bullying me so much. So this is kind of my turn to get back at him and put him in the hot spot. You know, so I'm getting my revenge here. I don't condone violence, but if you get the opportunity, to get your revenge, I'm not saying you have to, right? But
Yeah.
if you get that opportunity, definitely capitalize off of it. Allegedly, okay? You didn't hear that from me. Don't take my advice. I'm just saying. But yeah, let's get it. So before I ask you some of the planned questions, I actually asked some folks over on Twitter if they had any questions for you, right? So the first one is going to be from Vanzel. Shout out to Vanzel. And he wants to know, he said, we want to hear one crazy, funny, or weird story that happened on a commission. You can redact details, of course.
I actually don't have very many weird, like, I don't have a weird story specifically from a commission, because most of my clients have actually been fairly, like, nice people and not weird or anything like that. Like, there's always the clients that are a little bit more picky on what they want, or like change drastically some stuff that they want because they weren't paying attention to what I was building, or there's stuff like that, right? But every housing person, when they take commissions, has some of that. I think there's a funny story though, but it's not related to commissions. It's related to housing though. That randomly, I re-entered my personal house a while back, and then I see a person there, and they got so scared of a person showing up, I don't know why, that they started running into my wall and then trying to hide. And then I was just like, hey, and they're like, don't mind me, and I'm like, it's okay, you can come out, it's fine, this house is open, you're good, man. And it was just really
That's
funny.
so sweet.
Yeah. It's really funny.
I feel like
I don't
for me,
have any
I
really crazy things. But yeah, sorry, go.
had like, I don't know, I say one funny experience, right? So this was the commission I did for Iridessa. She wanted me to do her small to complete her little corner in Shirogane, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I put out that build, and usually what I do is the day that I put out the build, I don't visit it at all, and I only visit like the next day just to, really sit on it to see if I really vibe with it.
Yeah.
And so the next morning, I logged in before class, and I logged onto that alt, right?
Yeah.
And when I entered, there was two people in there, and one of them, it was a male character and a female character, right? A female aura and a male aura. And the female was doing one of those chair emotes. I think if y'all play Final Fantasy, you know where this is going. So she was using one of those chair emotes, and he was, behind her using one of those emotes as well. And when I entered, they like you could tell when people panic in game because their movement, they just like start tapping their keys out of panic,
Erratic,
right?
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
And I said in chat because I didn't. Okay, so firstly, let me just say, there are some designers who don't like when people are doing stuff like that or taking, NSFWG poses in their builds. Me,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not one of those. I'm all for it.
Same.
Have your fun. If I can build
Same.
a place to inspire y'all to bond like that, I support it. I endorse it. Okay. So I
Mm-hmm.
typed in chat and I was like, oh my God, let me give y'all your space. I'll come back later. Like I built this, I know the address. I'll come back later. And so I left, and when I teleported back to Limsa, the guy messaged me and he was like, oh my God, we are so embarrassed by now. Like we respect you so much as a designer and we feel like we disrespected your work by doing something like this in your build. And I'm like, no, 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 you haven't disrespected me. Like I love when people can just express themselves. And if they're doing it in one of my builds and shit, I've won. So I was like,
Yeah.
no, don't feel bad. Like, I appreciate the apology, but you truly have, like, nothing to apologize for. Like, it's fine. And
I'm
that
of the
was,
similar opinion where it's just like, yo, I'm glad you enjoy the space so much. I don't really care what you do with it. My client might have an issue with it, but that's a
that
totally
is true.
different story. But for me, any build that I'm making, if the address is up, you go G pose, do whatever you want in it. I don't
For
care.
sure.
It's made to be used, right? And however people want. Some clients don't like that, and I tell them, hey, if you don't like that and you found someone doing that, lock your door. I don't mind. It's in the end, it's your personal space. If you don't want people doing that, lock your door. I'm cool with it. But for me personally, I don't care. I'm just happy that it's being used because a lot of houses they sometimes don't even get used. So people want to go to the house, use it for however they like, G posing, other stuff, go for it.
Absolutely. Moving on to the next question. This one is from Tess, actually. She's in the chat right
Mm-hmm.
now. Hello, Tess.
I test.
Um, and she wants to know what is the one part you enjoy starting first when working on a house? Example, the kitchen, bedroom, windows, etc. It's a good question, by the way.
It's a
I
good
like it.
question. For me personally, I used to be a person that focuses on individual spaces first, so like a bedroom, a kitchen, a living room, whatever. But nowadays, I find myself leaning more towards getting the outside structure more built, and then working like what I do when I start a build is I place down a furniture that I know I'm going to use. So, for example, the divans that we're sitting on, I place a divan on the floor so
Mm-hmm.
that way I know how much space it takes up. And then I do kind of like a floor plan where everything's going to be placed. So, like where a bedroom would be theoretically placed, where a kitchen would be, living room, whatever, whatever. And then I kind of try to construct the spaces, the walls to make it fit, whether it's an open plan or closed plan. Um, and then I build the walls up and I add the roof because for some reason for me I can't visualize a space unless it has a roof. If it's just walls going straight up, I just can't visualize it very well. And then I start adding the windows, the TV, a bookshelf, theoretical like closets and stuff like that. So I work from a macros perspective towards a micro perspective, but I generally
Gotcha.
think I find myself going towards living rooms, decorating living rooms first, or the kitchen, depending on how much importance is placed on a specific space from the client. So if a client's like, if they say I want a bedroom, a living room, a kitchen, and a bathroom, I'm like, all right, which one's the most important to you? Because then I know how to divide the item economy. Because item economy, if people in chat know, that item economy is everything in this game.
It's
Um,
fine.
so so wherever the client wants the most detail, like oh I'm gonna hang out in the living room the most. I'm like all right, so we're gonna make that the most detailed space, and therefore I'm probably gonna work on it first.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And then you actually
Yeah.
kind of answered the next question, which was from Kai. Um,
Hmm.
and she asked, what works best for you, doing the bare bones layout first or making a build room by room? And I think you tackled that
Yeah.
question in your answer in the last
The
one.
yeah, I can expand on it a little bit more. I build everything out at a macro perspective, because
Do
I
you want
ended
to
up
use this
finding.
build as an example that we're in right now?
Yeah, sure. We can use this build as an example. I knew that for this build I wanted to create another double height because that's kind of just like a thing I've been doing. I've been doing a lot of double height like living rooms and such. And I know that I have an obsession with wooden blinds and windows. But I really enjoy how ornamentation windows hit the blinds to create a lot of like little white lights even on like black blinds like these. I really enjoy that, so I'm not going to apologize for spamming those. Um, so I usually just build, like, I know that the central area is going to have a really big open space, and like this space that's on top of me used to actually have like a walkway above here, but the problem, and like that was part of the original design, but I found that the walkway ended up not serving a purpose. I'm a person that when designing, things have to have a purpose, and they have to have a balance of purpose and aesthetic. So this walkway looked really good. Like above me, there was used to be a walkway. It looked really good for G posing because you have all these light rays coming in, and you're like, oh yeah, I can pose my character like behind it, so that way the light rays hit my character, and I look awesome. But the problem is, it made this central area really, really tight. It wasn't as open because if you create a space above here, it's really tight, and it cuts these windows in like half, so you don't really feel the vertical height as much. So I decided to scrap it. But going back to the question, kind of, is that I like doing a macro into a micro because when I was a younger designer, I've usually ended up making a really nice like living room or a really nice kitchen, and then realizing it doesn't really flow very well, and I'm like, ooh, I really, really don't want to move it, but I kind of have to because it doesn't flow right. And then I have to, and then I'm just like, and then I try to like reason with myself, and I'm like, ooh, but I could kind of make it work if I build the bedroom over here, but then it's kind of a little awkward because it doesn't quite work. So I decided I'm over that. I'm gonna just make everything really bare bones, and that way I can move things if I need to move things if they're not flowing very well. Because breaking down a really like, imagine I made that kitchen back there, and then I had to break it down because it wasn't working in the space it was provided. I was like, oh, I'd die.
Oh,
every
I
time
would
had
hate
to do
that.
Yeah, like this stair over here for this build used to not go this way. It used to go towards where the plant is and then go straight up. But then I was like, this is kind of like awkward because what ends up happening is you approach this area and you go like up here. Like with stairs, there's a certain way of flowing the stairs. I don't know how to describe it. I just know that like people talk about how to make stairs flow into each other. But having like the exit come out of say this shelf into like this handrail is really awkward personally. So I was like, okay, well I have to change how the stairs are. I have to shove them like further in here, which means that I have to change how these floor mats go and blah 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 blah. So I do that all when everything is like kind of a skeleton build, rather than build everything really complexly early and then be like, oh no, I have to change it. Yeah, I'm over that part of my housing career. It sucked.
I'm just like appreciating the layouting in this build that you use there. I like something that people I know in particular can struggle with is like on the shelving here, having this open shelving at the corner. Just to like, instead of having that obese block, opaque, sorry, wrong word there. Opaque block here, you open it up to add not only some extra detail, but add some character to the build as well, which is something that I appreciate because in my builds I don't do that as much. I think my brain is kind of, it has to be 100% clean. And when I see like you guys able to like implement stuff like this, it's so subtle, but it gets the job done, and it's really a great use of the space.
I am also a person that likes to make things like clean. I don't really pop the color like black that much either. Now I'm not like I'm trying to do more of it, but I don't quite do it all the time. I think a big thing with like say for this open shelving, the problem with open shelving in my experience for housing is that the things that makes really nice shelves aren't like thin enough. So like these are wooden flooring mats, and wooden flooring mats are great. Problem is they have a terrible float height. They have to go so high. So
Okay.
unless you do like a really big floated floor or a really high shelf, or like in this case a second floor, it's really hard to like make a really nice floated shelf like this. There are other items you can use like the Mog. There's like a Moogle like thing that you can use. I know people have used that, and there's other more recent items that people have used. But it is very difficult. So I don't really expect people to do something like this very often because this has a second floor and people don't. Oh man, second floors are so hard, but I really like them.
Plus, it's really high up, and not everyone wants to struggle that much, especially not only with like the way targeting works, which I'm gonna get into because I know you mentioned that you dye stuff last, which is kind of psychopathic
It is.
to me. Like, why do you do that to yourself? Like, you just
I know that dying during everything is a process you probably should do, but for me, it's more like if a house and its bare frames looks really good, color will only add to the impressiveness of the build. So how I pick out like items that I dye, I try to usually like try to click it. Oof, I can't click it. And then I unfortunately go through the menu and keep clicking every single item, and then dye it that way because you can right click the item to paint it. But yeah, my opinion is like if a house can look geometrically correct or like look geometrically good, then color will only add to it. So I know a thing that Morgan did for my personal house when he was helping me try to take pictures because I was like I don't know how the fuck to take pictures here. He was like, "Oh, let me show you this cool wireframe shader thingy," and I was like, "Wow!" It made my house look even better because the geometry just works out so well. And I was like, "Oh yeah, that's." So now I try to make sure everything geometrically looks good, and then color afterwards. It can just make it look better. Like whenever I finish dyeing everything, I'm like, wow, this build got like 10 times better. It's awesome.
I mean, okay, I understand and I get it, 100%, but I'm just not willing to Okay, so you already struggled with like building this hive for one, all right? And mind you, these are flooring mats. Clicking through these things as well as the imitation slanted skylights, hell, hell to deal with. And
if you yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Props to you because personally, I'm not gonna suffer through building and then suffer to try to click on these items that I suffered to put in position. I'm not doing that. I love myself.
The thing is like if you go to the housing menu and then you click on the indoor coloring or whatever, and you go through the menu with all your items, you can just click on each thing and it'll like highlight it.
Okay, but
And then I painted through that.
That is still so much work. That's additional steps that you don't. Okay, so hold on.
No. Okay, wait, no. It is additional work, but however, it actually lets you check if you have random items that you forgot in like behind things. So when I do it, I'm also checking through to make sure my item economics are really, really good. So like sometimes there's a random white rectangular partition that I floated that is behind like 3 or 4 or 5 wooden staircase bookshelves, and I'm like, oh, that was like when I started the build. Okay, good thing I got one item back. All right, bonus 1 item. Let's go. So that's like a double check thing for me too.
But okay, but that's not the intention though. So if
It's
you
just
go
a
through, if you wanna,
bonus.
no, if you wanna go through your menu for anything to figure out these additional item slots. I don't need this item to be in here. You can do that by selecting tabletop, wall mounted, and go through and see, okay, is this actually serving a purpose? But no, you going to the dine menu to try to select furniture because you chose to do it last is just giving yourself more work. And I feel like you adding that, okay, well, sometimes I can identify an item and get an item slot or two. That's not helping. I don't think that's helping your case. You're still giving yourself additional steps. And personally, I'm
What do you
just
mean? I'm
not gonna
doing two
put
steps at
myself.
one time. It's great. I'm doing two steps at
No,
one time.
one step is like a lucky occurrence, but the general thing, I don't know. I just feel like not so
I
much
am
work,
crazy
but
though. It's true.
if you're happy, I'm happy. I mean, at the end of the day, your boats look lovely. Like the one that we're in right now, beautiful, beautiful, you know? And I agree with you. Housing is suffering, but we're already suffering. I'm not gonna suffer more than I need to?
Yeah, I think
Y'all
I
wanna
saw
do
Hug
that?
say. I think I saw Hug say, yeah, people like blueprint it out and it like you sketch it all out. You don't have color when you're sketching it out. You have black and white. That's
You
all that
don't know
matters. Then you
that.
color in everything afterwards.
You don't know that. Suppose I use colored pencils, huh? To
I
frame
mean
my
but
windows.
hey, but that's an additional step that you're taking on
No,
top of your blueprint.
no.
I mean, okay. Another good reason actually to do it last is that sometimes it's kind of similar to the macro and micro thing I mentioned before, where I build everything first and then detail everything after. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Once you color something, you get really committed to it, and committing too hard means that the rest of your build might suffer, or like you commit too hard to a color palette in one room or one section, and then another section it just ends up not working right, and then you kind of get stuck and you get frustrated and you don't move on with your build. Right? A lot of housing is frustration because something doesn't look right. So I've made my housing process to a point where it's like if something doesn't look quite right, I can just break it and it's fine. I move on with my life instead of staring at it for too long. That's my copium. That's my copium. I think both can be answered as white rectangular partition. uh, the, the reason why they're blessed is they are a smooth surface that can be dyed any color, and that's
Mm-hmm.
awesome. They are pretty thin compared to normal partitions, which can be really good. I wish sometimes we can get an even thinner one, but you
For
can
sure.
stack them to make a really smooth surface. But that's also cursed because they are half height partitions, which is both cursed and blessed, and they have a float jump height of a quarter, and that sucks.
That
and
is true.
and sometimes I wish we actually had a white rectangular partition that was half height of the current one, because that way you could add like like a half partition basically that already exists in the game, but it's smooth. So I think white rectangular partition is both the greatest blessing we have in this game and also the biggest curse.
I agree, 100%. Like it has so much functionality, but at the same time, it kind of prevents that functionality as well, just because of its size. So I agree. I would
whatever
actually.
whatever Square Enix dev programmed this slat, I want to kiss you, but I also hate you.
I think that's the community in a nutshell.
Yeah.
With half of these items that they release. Okay, so now this is the second part of
Mm-hmm.
Midori's question, and it's: do you listen to anything while you build? Audiobooks, music, podcasts, etc. If so, what out? If so, what? Like, which one of them?
I actually, depending on my mood, I either watch TV shows that I've already watched before or movies that I've already watched before, because then I don't have to like pay attention to the plot that much. As
Mm-hmm.
background noise, I'm a person that really enjoys background noise when I work. I can't work in total silence. If so, that's if I'm in the mood for a TV show or a movie that I like, that I've watched. Otherwise, I listen to jazz, bossa nova music, and lo-fi. Those are my main current music preferences. Obviously FF14 soundtrack if I'm in the mood for it too. I generally find myself also working later at night, which, you know, it's dark, it's nice. Lo-fi hits really nice when it's dark. So when I'm vibing really hard and I'm in the mood, lo-fi really hits right. Yeah, it's pretty much that. So like shows that I watch, I've recently watched like Better Call Saul, Breaking Bad again.
Good taste.
Movies. The really good thing about movies is that if you know the plot, you just like kind of there for the action. So I really like Marvel movies in the background because you just hear explosions or like Tony Stark going off on Captain America or whatever, and it's great. It just yeah. That's usually what I do.
All right, and now for the last part of that question. She said, outside of housing, what kind of content do you love to do the most?
In 14, like was mentioned before, I do enjoy raiding. I'm getting kind of burnt out though right now because DSR, my group didn't finish DSR, and we got to like double dragons, and then we burned out really hard. People got real life stuff, so that group stopped and paused for now. That really burned me out for DSR. I still like doing ultimates. I still like raiding, but Savage doesn't really do it much for me anymore because once you do ultimate raiding, Savage feels really easy and is really like a chore. And the way they have Savage like made in the game with the weekly lockouts, and then the fact that they don't unlock the tier until like a month before the patch is like the raid tier is done. I'm like, that's dumb. I wish I could just farm it. Blah blah blah. Xenos video. Well, who cares? So I like raiding. I like doing combat content. We did EX farming. That was really fun. As for out of this game, I've gotten into building custom keyboards. I really like doing things that are like small, like doing things that with my hands. So like building stuff, model kits. Yeah, just like stuff like that. Otherwise, I had like other games that I play. I play farming sims, so like Stardew Valley, Old Harvest Moon, Rune Factory. I play some shooters, like I still play Destiny 2 sometimes. Yeah, those are like my hobbies.
Awesome. I like that. I think having a lot of different things that you can explore helps, especially as a creative person, right? If you invest too much time into one thing, that's obviously going to overlap. And you don't want that because it's going to limit what you can come up with. Now, you mentioned the word that I liked, and that is something that's trendy, right? So, I want to ask you, what are your thoughts on our current design trends?
The biggest trend in the last like year has been open windows and bringing the outdoors inside builds, because you know we build inside mostly. There's still yard stuff, but mostly it's inside. I think the trend towards bringing outdoor elements, trees, patios, gardens inside is really, really cool. Because it adds like a whole level of immersivity to the game. Because initially, like say we have the imitation windows, everyone loves them, but they're kind of bulky and they stick out rather than being like recessed like these windows you see behind me. They're recessed rather than if you slapped a imitation window, they would like stick out and it wouldn't like look as good. So we've moved from fake. We had imitation windows, made fake windows using the light rays from those imitation windows. Then we've progressed to adding lighting to those fake windows, so they're a little bit more realistic because lighting is everything. And then we've progressed even further to adding foliage and stuff to make the windows not just like, well, most of my windows back here you can see are just blue with some lighting, which is like okay in terms of immersivity, but isn't like too much. But there's like people with amazing windows where they actually crit the lighting correctly for the trees that would be in the background. There's like the horizon and stuff like that. And I think that's it's a really cool trend. That's added a lot, and in terms of like literally people making gardens, like Japanese gardens, patios, cityscapes, all that stuff is fantastic. And exploring some Japanese builds, they've built like literally whole cities inside. I think it's awesome. I think making a build that is like outdoors inside, fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the best trends we've ever had.
Awesome, and I agree. I think one of the trends that I've come to love, well, that I've seen is kitchens. I think there was a time where
Mm.
if you had a good kitchen in your build, that's where you would invest the most item slots. I think when people realized how great glass jars were to use as handles and stuff like
Yes.
that, or even when we can see in the kitchen right now when the wooden staircase bookshelves came out, that texture is just godsend for
Mm-hmm.
cabinets or any type of storage that you're going for, especially if it's around the modern edge. So I think that
Yep.
was one of my highlights in terms of current housing trends. I will say though, one of the trends that is kind of still current that's happening that I think sometimes maybe it may not be necessary. I love them. Like, let me just preface by saying I love them, but the patios. I feel like sometimes you could just put a window there, you know, because I feel so, I'm a victim of this as well. You know, in the commission I did for Iridessa, at that
Mm-hmm.
time, I think that was the one I did after El Oceano, where I did that slanted balcony for the beach
Yeah.
house. And I was like, okay, so I post this out, I post this build, and people love this. So now I have to give them a little bit more of it. And in the bedroom, it was elevated, it was a one floor. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, instead of just having this window here, I'm gonna have it open and put like a little patio here. And now I look back at it and I'm like, Ram, you know, you make amazing designs and everything, but you didn't have to put that there. You know, you could have left that out. So,
One of the things with patios I find is they're extremely small, extremely tight, and sometimes you can't even G-pose well in them, or the effect, the like the outdoors effect that they have sometimes isn't very good. It's not immersive enough for my liking. So what I like to do instead of a patio, I don't remember if I've done a patio build. I feel like I have, but I might have not. Uh,
mhm.
if I make a patio, it has to be incredibly immersive. Otherwise, I would just like add patio-esque elements to the window itself,
That's
and
true.
that would look way better. Because the most difficult thing I think in this game is adding the illusion of depth. Adding the illusion of depth through proper lighting and proper item placement is incredibly difficult. So I remember one of the coolest things that I saw, in terms of like your build was when in your I think that one of your beach builds, where you put
Mhm.
like a table and a chair clipped into the window, but like there were blinds and stuff, so you could like barely see
Yes.
them. But it
Yes.
gave the illusion of depth without actually committing to a full patio. So from certain angles, you could feel like there was more through that window. Because like these windows, they don't have too much depth, for example. But because I wanted to make sure the slats for the window frame were only you can only
Mhm.
see one thing, so I committed to making it really shallow. But for like that one, for example, you could really see the depth there. And I think having the illusion of depth is better than actually having the depth sometimes because the lighting in this game isn't very good. Maybe that'll change in 7.0, who knows? Hopefully, copium. But that's my opinion on patios. It's kind of like sometimes the illusion of a patio is better than actually having a patio. So I don't know how often a person would actually be on a patio.
That's true.
Depends
And
on
I
the
agree.
depends on the person. Depends on the person.
I agree 100%. So that I'm gonna take that as you talking to me while I was doing that though. So future ma'am, keep that in mind, okay? But speaking of things to keep in mind, I want to know, what do you do to get your creative juices flowing? Like, is there any warm up? I know you mentioned before it starts with like the research. You like to, you know, dig deep into the themes
Yeah.
and stuff. But
hmm Nowadays, what I start a build, I need a really good starting point. So I need a really good starting reference. Whether that's looking at Pinterest, looking at Google Image, looking at Behance. I need something like either a bit like an architectural build or an interior design that really gets that spark going. And once that spark goes, it's like smooth sailing from then on. But the hardest part for me when I'm building is starting. So I saw this really cool concept that I want to build for sure at some point, where I saw a really nice skyline, like of like dusk, I think, where it's just blue and pink, and it's like those really artistic images and stuff. And I was like, wow, I really want to make a like an apartment build where it's just dusk and it has a really nice blue to pink gradient. And I definitely want to do something like that. So that's what gets me started for this house. For example, I saw another double height living room. I know I've done a couple at this point. Blah blah blah. I really like them. And I was like, I've done double height living rooms, but nothing with a completely bottom to the top double height window. And I wanted to see how that looked. So I did it in this build, and I was like, wow, it looks really good when the sun's up, or when the light rays are going through. And that also partially influenced me removing the walkway, because I was like, it ruins the height of it, but now it's like completely there, and it looks awesome. And yeah, so usually one tiny aspect of something is what drives me to make the build. It just depends which build we're talking about. If you like ask me on a specific build, like what was the inspiration factor that made you do it, there's always something like that for me to start a build.
Gotcha.
And all the research associated around after you get that inspiring first image.
And don't say that the windows here look good with the light rays, because they look beautiful. It's nighttime and they still look gorgeous. I think you did a really good job with like the ambient lighting, which you could see here, and then you have the little bit of plant life coming through. So give yourself some credit, okay? And don't blah 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 your love builds, because you're good at them. You make them so nice, and you actually inspired me to find some inspiration for my personal, which is gonna be a loft build as well. So don't blah 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 your stuff. I think you do such a good job at executing these ideas, and it definitely shows with the research that you do with the final products of your builds, right?
Thank you.
So now that you kind of mentioned that you do a lot of research, right? So sometimes you can research a style or something, and it may not always work out, right? So I want to ask, in terms of like things not working, out in your benefits, right? So I want to know have you ever felt that like your personal expectations have limited your creativity? And if so, how have you dealt with this?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
No problem. Have you ever felt that your personal expectations have limited your creativity? And if so, how have you dealt with this?
Ooh, okay. My
Yeah,
personal expectations, okay. Through housing, I've obtained a certain level of self-confidence. So my personal expectation depends on who I'm doing the build for, usually, actually. So if it's for a client that's been really nice, I want to make the house great. I want to make it as nice as possible. If the client's not so nice, I can get away with a little bit less effort. My personal expectation has definitely hampered my creativity, especially in like personal builds, so builds that I've built for myself. So, for example, in my current personal build on Corel, I spent a month plus on that build, and I'm still not happy with it. And I'm just like, I want to make it even better. I want to make it even better. I want to make it even better, which is my expectation, which does hamper my creativity because I know that I want something. I want a certain aspect in that build to look and work so well, but I've learned to just sometimes you gotta let it go, of the expectation and just build and then let it sit for a bit. No matter how hard, because if you just keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing yourself, you're gonna get burned out and you're gonna hate what you build. So I've just let myself get, I don't want to say complacent, but it's kind of complacent.
Mm-hmm.
Build something, be like, okay, I tried my best. My parents have always told me, just try your best. You can't try, and you can't do anything like better other than trying your best. You can't make any, yeah, you just try your best. Nothing more you can do. So nowadays I just try my best. My personal expectations, I usually meet them, and if I don't, I just sit on it for a little bit, and then my brain will click with something looking off or looking right, and then I change it. And without sitting on a build for like months, which is unreasonable for a client usually, because that's all you can do. You can just try your best, do what you can, do what you do, be self-confident in your abilities, and yeah, that's it. Like I can't. My expectations have hampered creativity,
Mm-hmm.
because they make you get stuck. Like you gotta like do something, you gotta make it do something, blah 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 blah. But you just gotta let it go. That's it. That's why it's just like nothing in housing is permanent. Um, Whether you like you think a room looks perfect or whatever, but it doesn't work with the rest of the thing, you gotta let it go. Sometimes you gotta be sad. You gotta break it. You gotta break it. You gotta save it for another day. It just doesn't work, and yeah, just gotta let it go. That's all you gotta do sometimes. And then because you've already built it once. That's the thing, right? You've already built it once. You know how it's built. Like the building process is painful, of course, but you know how it's built, and you have a picture of it probably. So if you want it back, you can always remake it, but don't get too attached. And sometimes time is the best way to let it process.
I agree with that because sometimes, even like you may have like a concept in mind, but
Mm-hmm.
we wouldn't have like the items and you would get frustrated at that moment. But then you sit on it, you continue, building. Of course, you're sad, you're hurt that you couldn't implement it right then and
Yeah.
there. But next patch comes around and boom, you get an item that can actually be it's perfect, that's your prayers being answered there. So I do think I like that advice. I struggle with it, sometimes myself, because when I look at inspirations, I try my best to like pick and choose like little things. And if
Yeah.
something that I really, really love from it doesn't work out, I'm like, damn, I don't even want to continue building for the rest of the day. And that would
Yeah.
like bum me out. So I do like that perspective, and I'm gonna take that advice to myself as well because I need it, and I think a lot of people need to hear that, right? Especially as creators, we may create something, but hey, we're creators, right? If we created this, we can create something else. We can create something better, than
Yep.
what we thought we could have created before. So I do like that. And I'm also happy that you touched on that confidence because anyone involved in the creative side of things, I feel like when it comes to being confident in your work, especially, right?
Yeah.
That's a battle that we're gonna have to face at one point. And that leads me into my next question, right? And
Yeah.
that is, have you ever been faced with negative feedback? And how was this reflected in your work, if it was reflected at all?
I've negative feedback. For some of my clients on my earlier builds, because I didn't know how to communicate and distill what they wanted. When you're starting out commission work, you don't know all the ins and outs of commissions, and you don't know how to communicate with people. You don't have a solid terms of service and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
There was a build where I built something like that was awesome. I got everything. I got most of the things they wanted, but I didn't get everything. They wanted like a stage and stuff, and they wanted like a sitting room or whatever, and it wasn't able to fit that with the complexity of the build. And I got the feedback, and they're like, "Oh, it's so small. We wanted the stage so that we could just like hang out on it, and we wanted the room that I told you about from your previous build." And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
"Okay, I can work." I'm like, they were really disappointed apparently, and I was like, "Oh, fine. I stayed up all night to make it the way it is right now. I guess I have to trash some of it to get some items back, and fit the like last couple things in." which is partially like my fault. You know, when a client really asks for something, that's when I learned when a client really asks for something, it's just like you gotta really make sure that it's there, or communicate with them really well and explain the problems of trying to implement it. So I've learned from that and made it so that my TOS is more solid in that I'm going to try my best. I'm going to try to communicate with you, blah, 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 all that stuff. So my TOS is really robust now just from working with them. And I've generally had less, like, almost no negative feedback now. Because at the end of, like, making a build, I'm just like, yo, check it. Tell me what you want changed. And I also try to be more mindful of the fact that when a person says, oh, I want living room, bedroom, bathroom, kitchen, and I'm like, okay, I will try my best, but in the case that I am not able to get one of these rooms, which room would be okay with killing, right? Because, like, so most people kill, like, a bathroom or a kitchen or whatever. And then I'm very transparent with the fact that item economy, very difficult. You have, like, a large, I generally can get 3 rooms, but I can get 4, like, provided the space is enough, like, provided the space allows it, and the item economy allows it. And now I just talk with the person, because not everyone knows all the ins and outs of FF housing. That's why they hire a designer, right? Like, they don't know everything.
For sure.
So I try to be very communicative to prevent the negative feedback from happening. So be like, oh, why is it so small? Well, I told you that it was going to be smaller because you wanted the thing, and therefore you agreed when I said, oh, it's going to be smaller, and therefore you have to deal with it because I literally told you. Like you can't say anything if I've informed them and they have accepted already, right? Which is the extra step that I personally take because I know that not everyone is knowledgeable about housing ins and outs. So
For sure.
I think being really communicative to your client, there's always bad clients. I've been lucky that I've probably only had maybe like 2 or 3 bad clients in my entire history. But talking more with them and showing that you are professional and that you kind of care about your work and you care about what they want goes a long way in making them happy with what you built.
I agree with that 100%. And I feel like especially in terms of like having that portfolio and a strict terms of service, I think as designers, especially if we do commissions, I consider myself a commissions designer, as 95% of my catalog has been designs for other people. I'm very thankful that early on in my designing career, I realized that, okay, people are coming to me for a service that I can offer to them because they're unable to for whatever reason, right? So it's okay for me to be specific, be clear about, okay, this is what I am going to do, and this is what I'm not going to do. And I also think that it's okay to say, well, if you've reviewed my terms of service or whatever, and you don't agree with, 1 or 2 things, there's other people out there. There's a lot of creative people that can possibly deliver what you want, even better than me, right? So it's not like they're entitled, to just sucking it up and just, doing it just for the sake of doing something. But I also will say that a big part of housing and what I've noticed, especially, like I said, as I've been only mostly doing commissions, is that compromise goes a long way in designing.
Yes.
And if you're able to, discuss this from the get-go, the moment that they share their reference images, their inspiration, or they, just tell you, okay, well, is this going to be possible? And then you as the designer says, well, yes, this is possible, but X, Y, and Z is the case. And once both of y'all come to an agreement and you can agree to, compromise on some things, like for me, right? They would want modern detailed spaces, and the compromise that they're gonna have, I can provide that for them, but the compromise that they're gonna have to make is accepting that I'm only doing 1 floor designs, right? So I think once you have that sort of balance, that really helps the whole process of whatever you're creating go smoothly, and everyone wins in the end. I think it's killing two birds with one stone. And I love that compromise. A huge thing.
If a person doesn't want to compromise or doesn't want to talk it through, it's already a red flag, and you should just drop it, right? It's just they're not going to be the type of client you like. With newer designers, I feel bad because I remember when I was a newer designer, and I think when I was started designing, I got pretty lucky in terms of the clientele I received. They were all very nice people, mostly. But nowadays, newer designers get bullied. Like they
100%.
They get so bullied. They get the most entitled people. When A, this is a video game, and B, it's a service. You need to treat the people that you want to hire well because it's a creative endeavor and it's a service. There are plenty of designers. There's so many designers. Not all of them are well known, but there's a lot of designers that can probably suit you. It's like the argument of like artists charging $40 for a full body art piece. You can do that. You are devaluing yourself though. You're devaluing yourself though, because like again, it depends on your life situation. If you need that money to literally live, then it's a different story. But you're gonna churn and burn yourself out. But the people that are charging like $100 full bodies or like $200 full bodies, they need that to eat or something. There's a reason why it's behind there. And like bullying people that are literally going to design your house for you, not a smart play. And it's just like both the clientele needs to be nicer because there's been a huge amount of housing that's opened up, right? Housing is insane right now. There's so many houses on so many servers. I know not now anymore because most of them are taken up, but most of them, there's still some houses out there. And there's so many people that have like gotten houses, and some of them want to do their own houses, and some of them want to hire designers. But because there's so many people with houses now, there's such a wider audience for it, and that audience sometimes is not always nice to newer people. And newer people need to sometimes it's both the clientele needs to be nicer. Sure, can't make everyone nice, but the people that can change, I hope you change. And the designers themselves, they need to also realize you can get better people than that. You are worth more than what they're treating you as. You obviously don't overvalue yourself. You're starting out, you got to start somewhere, of course.
You got to stay humble.
But if someone insults you by saying like your price is too high, if you've put in the time, the effort, the work into making a really nice house, don't let that bother you. Because bro, if a client said that to me, yo, you're not worth this price, and be like, yo, you're not worth my time, get the fuck out of here.
Period.
I don't care. Because I know I'm that good, and a lot of not younger designers, technically like newer designers, need to also realize if they've put in the work, if you've legitimately done your research, put in the work, made awesome stuff, you should need to have that self-confidence too, to be like, no, I'm not taking you. There's plenty of people out there that can do it. Yo, I'm always full of commission. I've literally not stopped doing commissions since I started doing commissions. Like, in terms of, like, the work I have received, I've literally stopped had work. Yo, if you need a shout-out, let me look at your work. I'll shout you out, because if your commissions are open and you don't have anything, yo, and there's, like, people that need houses, yo, I'll send them your way, man. If your work's good, I'll vouch. It's like, It's crazy. Some of these newer designers, what they get faced with is insane. I'm like, I've never experienced that, and I'm lucky for that. But like, damn.
I agree, because like I see some, screenshots of people just being so pushy, and I'm like, excuse me, I wish someone had the audacity to try me like this when I was starting out. I think even on my prices, since I started designing, this is my third year, and I've changed my pricing, I think 3 times so far, but I'm pretty happy with where it's at right now in terms of like my skill and the quality of work that I produce.
Yeah.
And from the get-go in my prices, I said that, I asked that you respect the prices that I'm asking for, because I know my quality, and you're gonna see that in the work. So it's like, and the English again, this topic just gets me So, a little heated, right?
Yep.
So it's like, if you make $100 a month, I'm not expecting you to go eat at a luxury restaurant every night, right? So
Nope.
if you can afford a certain amount of gil in this case, then there are designers within your budget, buddy. Like, you don't have to come to me and tell me
Yep.
that and
My
talk about
prices
my
are too
prices.
high. Yep.
Exactly. There's people with lower options out there in every single market. So don't try to tell me how much I'm worth.
Yep.
Firstly, like, you're coming to me. Let's start there.
Yep.
You know, and I
We
never,
don't owe you anything.
absolutely not. And I never understood too, this other thing where people feel the need to comment on how much space is used in a design. And those people
Oh no.
who
Okay, yeah,
take
go.
time out of their day to go to a designer's house just to put in their message book, yo, this is nice, but such a waste of space. No, what's a waste of space of people buying large houses, only paying their sub to log in and enter their house once every 45 days and then log out? And I love that we've started calling them the size queens. I absolutely a term fitting for them.
We're here.
I
All right.
cannot stand them. Take it away, Astra. I know you have thoughts on this. Take it away. Take it away.
My thoughts are not really anything new, other like in terms of people's opinions, like complex housing designers in terms of their opinions of like space queens and such, size queens, whatever.
Size queens. Mm-hmm.
The big thing about that though is like there's so many things wrong with that statement. Like it's like your house is nice, but so much wasted space. I'm like, yeah, but you're not living in it. You are completely irrelevant to how this was made and who it's for.
Like, you're trespassing, actually.
Yeah, and it's just like, I don't care. If you care, like, why did you even come here? Why did you even comment? Are you just jealous that you don't have a large house or you don't have a house and someone's using it in a different way that you would have wanted it to? Are you jealous that this is the house that you bidded on and then you didn't get it and then someone filled it up with something that's really small? I know I'm projecting a lot here, but I have a house, so therefore I don't care. And then I'm just like, the weird thing is like, on Crystal, I've never had that comment. I know whenever I see y'all post it, 'cause I know you're ex Primal, but you go to Primal still a lot, and like Morgan here, he's Aether, and I know see a bunch of other people from other servers or other data centers, and I always see these comments, and I've never had one happen in Crystal from any of my Crystal builds, and I'm just like, yo, something's wrong with the other data centers. Most of the comments, yes, Semia, most of them are made out of jealousy. I know that. It's just like, dang, dude. That's why I don't let it bother me too much, and I'm just like, dang, you got stuff to work on, man.
It's like, why are you so upset?
Yeah. And it's like, because the thing is, it's like, if okay, so say they're not jealous, right? Say they're just like, wow, you wasted so much. Dude, there's plenty of builds where people use all the space. There's like a lot, like most of them are not designer. Most of them are people using the full space, which I don't mind. I think people that can use the whole space really effectively, yo, more power to them. You are awesome. I can't do that. I hate the default walls. They suck. I hate pillars. They suck. Pillars mostly, they suck. New Alpine pillar is pretty awesome. And I'm just like, dude, like if you wanted to visit a fully used house, just go next door, man. It's probably there. Just go. No one cares.
You know who I think made a pretty good statement in response to some of those comments? Peach, when she made that video compiling some of the comments that people left. That was iconic. When she posted that video, I was like, oh my god, you're gonna piss off so much people, but it had to be said, and I'm glad she put it out in that format. I loved it.
I make fun of Peach for that shoebox build because it's a shoebox, but that's because it's playful making fun of it because it's really small, but it's really good. But it's really small.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
But we appreciate that.
Well,
You know, we understand why.
Yeah.
We understand why.
It's just the size, queens. Man, y'all gotta find the houses that you like. And like even like kind of tangentially, it's like the people that are asking for like they're looking for a commission. They're asking like us, so like complex housing designers, like I shouldn't say complex because not floating can be complex as well. High amounts of glitching designers. There we go. We have a certain style, and we like that style. And then people ask us sometimes, yo, can you do a house with all 3 floors and like stuff like that? I'm like, I can. I just wouldn't enjoy it. If you want to find a person like that, there are actually a lot of people that do it like that. I would recommend looking elsewhere for that because I genuinely do not enjoy doing multiple floors unless it's like a large with a high ceiling, and then I can get a little complex with that. But you know what I mean? Like, say you have a medium, I'm not going to decorate top floor, the ground floor, and the basement. I'm sorry, I don't enjoy that type of decorating. It's just me. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just
That's why
more
people have to know how
fun
to say no.
overall.
Yeah.
Way more
Has to be fun. No, it has to be fun.
Like that's housing takes so much time, and I feel like people kind of disregard that aspect. Like we're out here like doing research. Before like we're building, we're in the process of decorating this house before we even place items in the game. So it's like, what are you talking about right now? Like your point doesn't even make sense at this point, right? So I think that was a pretty good point.
Shout out to Nikki. Nikki always makes amazing multi-floor houses, and like it's a skill. It's a different skill to use multiple floors and decorate it like enough to where doesn't feel empty. It's a different skill. I don't enjoy utilizing that skill, but people that do, more props to you, man. It's awesome.
I admire, like when I go to FCs and I visit my friends' FC houses, like these are perfect examples actually. Like if you want to see how people can decorate a house using like all the spaces, go to your friends' FC houses. There's FC wards now. Go to FC wards and see how people, use that. Like stop making it your mission to comment on people for their preferences. Like you don't have to have the same preferences I do.
I've seen so many amazing full FC houses. I'm just like, yo, this is awesome. I visited a house where during Halloween where the entire thing was a haunted house. I was like, yo, this is awesome. This is amazing.
Like all 3 floors?
Just the basement, but the top was like the FC house. Like basically, they made their basement like a Halloween maze, and their ground floor was like a normal FC, but just a little bit Halloween spec. But I was just like, yo, that's awesome. That was great.
Yeah, people can do so much.
Yep.
With the regular base system. So definitely there's avenues that you can explore if you're interested in stuff like that, right? So I want to ask you something, Astra, right? So both you and I, we have, a love for modern. Like that shows in our builds, right? Kind of similar, kind of not. So I want to ask, if you and I were to trade places, tell me the one thing about yourself that I should know. So are you gonna make me struggle if I were to, trade places with you in terms of like the designs that we create?
I'm not quite sure this is the direction you're going in, but if like the stuff that I do that you would struggle with in terms of making modern, is that what it is?
No, but anything that you feel like I should know if we were to trade places. Like there could be like some secret. Yes. Or just being creative at all,
Just being creative? Okay. Probably you would struggle with my workflow. My workflow is sometimes really chaotic. Like I said, I work from outside in. I do macro and then micro. So I know for you, you are a micro and then macro, as evidenced by us talking about your latest build and like me helping you with that. It's a struggle. Sure. Like my work process is definitely, as many people have said in chat, very weird. with the dying part at least. Um, so I think you would struggle if you tried to build like I would, for example, or like my creative workflow, because you have to build the entire area first, and then you have to fill it with stuff, and then you don't dye anything along the way, and then you dye everything at the end. Yeah, it's probably the workflow. I don't know. It's like with us, with me and you, it's like we do modern, yes. You're just a little bit more oriented towards darker builds and chocolatey builds and whatnot. I can do those as well. I just haven't. I've made dark builds, but I don't really like chocolatey builds. But so like in terms of our like housing knowledge, it's probably about the same. Probably more in some aspects than the other. Blah blah blah. So the only thing I can really think of is workflow and how it differs. So if we were to swap, you'd be like, why is my brain like this?
Oh gosh.
So
I think
that's what I'm
for,
thinking.
for you, I would probably say, you also do commissions as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's funded. Do you have like a furnishing cost that your clients give you for
Yes,
furniture and stuff? Okay.
I always have a base commission cost, so the cost that I will take, and then or like the price that I will take, the amount that I take for myself without the furnishing cost, and then the furnishing cost is additional, because what I realized is that if you mix your furnishing cost with your take home pay essentially, you get a wild range of take home pay, because that incentivizes you. Like I will still go to different servers and look for cheaper housing. Like I'll use the Discord bot to find, or Universalis to find the cheapest white rectangular partitions on multiple different servers that I'm willing to go data center travel to. Blah 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 blah. But if you make it so that your furnishing fee is also part of the total fee, you are now burdened with the time it takes to go to the other server to get the lowest possible cost, no matter what, or even craft it yourself, which takes forever. I don't have time for that. Time is valuable. So yeah.
Man, I envy those designers that craft all their items. I think if you and I were to trade places, something that I think you should know is just be prepared to have an idea in your mind, place like one or two items, and then, okay, let me just go on a shopping spree on the market board and buy some items, and then go back inside and say, you know what? Mind you, this is after you spent your commissioner's money, right? And then say, you know what? I don't like this idea anymore. And just that's you constantly. That's gonna happen during your building process. I'm sorry if I have past clients and watching right now. I promise I use your guild responsibly. I actually don't. But yeah, just be prepared to have that happen. Well,
I mean, that happens a lot anyway. Like, dude, when I made my personal house, I was like, yo, I need like for this lamp next to us. Instead of this plant, I used a Gobu lamp, and I was like, yo, I committed to the Gobu lamp. It's 3 million gil. I have to use it somehow. I have to. I can't not use it now. It's 3 million.
But I mean, yeah, if you're spending that much, absolutely. Like that's like spending burden partitions with the intent that, okay, I want to make some open windows, and then you just do like the white screens, and then you know you have to at that point.
It's part of the
remember
clients. It's part of the process. It's part of the process. I'm
yeah,
sorry. It's just how it is.
You gotta just let the community have a little bit of that guilt, right? If you're paying me millions, you can afford to put 400,000.
If you're hiring me in the first place, you probably can afford it. Yeah, you're fine, right? Yeah.
You won't miss it. That's pocket change to you, right?
Sometimes, yeah.
So I want to ask, because we mentioned, your styles and stuff. So my question to you is, how do you manage to stay both personal and original in your designs?
Ooh, that's a good question. Personal and original. Okay, well here's an easy thing. I try not to nowadays. I try not to look at ff14 houses anymore. Because I don't want to copy in any aspect another person's creation. Because in art, if you try to use something as a reference, like say you're drawing, you trying to, it's common to copy a person's art style when you're starting out. And you know, obviously early on, I definitely had my fair share of inspiration from other ff14 housing players. Um, but nowadays, I try to make sure I don't copy other people's, or I don't look at other people's ff14 houses. That way, I can be original without copying. If our designs look similar, I'm sorry, we use the same reference. I know that's happened a couple times already in the 14 community. Not in a negative way. I just, you know, you see the nice real life design. You're like, oh, this is awesome. I want to recreate it. You recreate it. A couple months later, someone else does it. They didn't realize that you made it thing, and you're like, yo, cool. We used the same reference. It's awesome. I like how you did this instead of like, you know, it's great. That's awesome. I know that's happened with some people in chat. I know a couple examples there. But so yeah, I try to use real life references if it's incidentally the same as someone else's. I'm sorry, we use the same reference. That way, no one can accuse me of plagiarism. And I try to also not. Sometimes it's nice to directly copy a reference. It's really cool sometimes. Because some people have like amazing ways that they execute spatial stuff in furniture and whatever. And then, you know, like there's people like Morgan that make amazing furniture that uses up 50 slots, and you're like, yo, I want that there because it looks perfect or whatever.
Are you slot shaming right now?
No, a little bit, because I'm an item economist first, but you know, Morgan knows towels. That's all I'll say. But then I also, to try to make it original, sometimes I directly copy, sometimes I don't. I generally try not to directly copy because I like taking elements of references and executing them in my own way. So for example, with like this house, I saw the big window, the double height living room, and I know I saw the TV area. I really wanted to make sure that was like a wall the whole way up to make you feel the height. I knew I wanted those aspects, and in my references, it's kind of similar. However, I had to. This is where ff14 housing stuff can actually be a benefit because of how certain items work. You have to change the original intention of the design. So because of how like wall-mounted stuff works, you got to change it. You got to change the height. You got to change where your lines and geometric stuff would be because it'll snap and therefore it doesn't work. You got to change it because your client is like a potato versus like a Hrothgar or something. So like little stuff like that can make you, even if you have a lot of IRL references and you're like trying to capture the mood of that, you can make it original. So that's how I make things originally, like for me.
Gotcha. I also do that. I think earlier on I would see, this is like, we can say a few months to a year when I first started, I would look at in game, but then I realized, hold on, I'm kind of, because I cannot realistically tell you the last time I used Housing Snap for inspiration or reference.
Me too.
The only time, well, I can't even say this because I don't do it anymore, but the only time I ever went on Housing Snap in recent times, even though recent is probably the same as Morgan's last build, you know, so a while ago, but I only went on there to upload, you know, my builds to the website.
Yep.
But never to like look for, you know, inspiration. I do think, especially since we do modern, I think we're gonna have to look at IRL concepts. Pinterest has to be our best friend at one point if you're exploring that modern architecture style. If you really want to be creative and a little bit more, you know, original. So I do also agree with you on that. I do the same thing. I think it really helps and it reflects in our work.
Yeah, kind of related to like how do you make things original? If you look at my builds, I don't actually have a lot of item variants. I am a person that is very simple in my item usage. You see wood slats, you see a sofa of some kind, you see white rectangular partition, you see hanging bookshelf, all those stuff. But what gets me going is how can I use such simple components and then make something completely new? Some people are awesome at like, new item comes out. I gotta test it in like 5 different dimensions. How can I execute something? Morgan, for example, is someone like that. One of his upcoming builds, ooh, you guys are gonna lose it. And it's people like that I greatly respect, because I'm just like, wow, I never would have thought like that, because I'm stuck in my my wooden slat phase forever because I suck. So figuring out new ways on using very base materials to create something really different is really cool in my opinion.
I feel like
And
that
that's how
works out
I also
too.
maintain being original.
It works out
Sorry,
because sometimes from like a newer person's perspective or a housing appreciator, using some of these more common items like the slats, the staircase, bookshelves, someone who's seeing it, like looking at it without like a break it down or something, as long as they are able to identify what those items are, if they want to create something in their personal, not for like, sharing or doing it for like a commission or anything like that, but just for them, uh, just starting out, I think it also helps them because they may not be able to like identify all of like the little hidden features, but I think just being able to use some of these common items in so much different ways just shows how creative your mind is,
Yeah.
and I think that helps benefit a lot of people in the community. Me myself, one of my most used items, and for a while I critiqued myself for it because I felt like, well, I wasn't doing enough. I used a lot of white rectangular partitions in my builds
Mm-hmm.
early on, and I was like, am I not being as original? Because I would look at, some of the designs that I'm seeing on my feed, and I'd see people using concrete textures. I'd see people
Yeah.
using like 100% full wooden builds. And I'm like, oh my gosh, am I not being, creative enough or original enough because I'm using like white rectangular as my standard? But I think when you judge one individual component, you're doing yourself an injustice because you can't
Mm-hmm.
just judge one part of your work. You have to combine all of the different things that you did in your build, right? So you can use the white rectangulars as like your bone, as your base, but the way
Yeah.
that you fill your build with organs and the way that you place it, and when it's done, the complete build, that's the heart, that's the
Yeah.
whole thing, and that's gonna be the most important thing. So I think once people, can realize that, it's gonna take a lot of pressure. And once I did, it really helped me, and it helped me branch out more actually. Instead of
Yeah.
beating myself up, when I was able to appreciate the stuff that I'm already doing, that just spiked my creativity 100%.
I I also went kind of something like through that because I know that I am not the person to fiddle like Morgan in chat where it's like, I love rotating items just to find the one unique shit that hasn't been seen yet. I'm not that person. I am sometimes if there's like a cool item that I notice and there's like, ooh, what if I like rotate here? Sometimes I do that, but not all the time. I also struggled with am I not creative enough because I don't like make complex furniture or like whatever. And I realized
100%.
I I'm not I'm just not that type of builder. I'm the type of person that focuses more on layouts, and layouts are harder to
Underrated.
copy, and layouts are harder to copy and be like, I made this 100%
Mm-hmm.
in a way. Furniture, that's why when I think with furniture, I'm just like, yo, if it's out there, yo, just take it, man. It's uh, furniture can only be so complex, and it's really cool when people share how they made it, and so other people can use it. Um, but for me, the unique thing when I enter a build is how all that furniture is laid out. Does the space flow? Can I walk from one section to the other section in a relatively understanding manner? Because you have to think, even though this is a video game, right? You have to think,
Mm-hmm.
what's the convenience of a person sitting on this couch going to the kitchen? All right, I can go around here and it's just a straight shot to, like, this would be the fridge or whatever. Or I want to go around this way because I want to have a split view of the window as I pass by.
For sure.
Like, there's stuff like that aspect that I like tinkering with rather than with items, which is why I also like, space proportions and whatnot are also important. So yeah, I think for us it's like modern slash contemporary. We use the same items all the time, but we rehash it in a way and or arrange things in a way where it becomes new again.
100%. And that reminds me actually, we kind of touched on this earlier, but it's like when you're building something like your bedroom or something like that, or a bedroom for a client in a build,
Yeah.
I used to harp on it being like super private, but then it's like, even for myself, it's like, why am I so focused on making this secluded or hidden if it's just me that's gonna, or the person that's gonna be living there? So it's
Yeah.
like, what's the point of
It,
that? Like, it's you in your house.
it depends on what the person wants. Sometimes some people like to live similarly to the way they live in real life, and they're like, yo, I want to close that bedroom because I don't feel comfortable it being open. And I'm like, okay, I can do that. Other times I'm just like, yo, are you cool with the bedroom being open? Like, yeah, I don't care, let's go. And I'm like, all right, cool. And all depends on who you're making it for, in my opinion. Yeah.
For sure, for sure. Um, I want to ask you, this one might be a little, who knows? We'll see, right?
We'll see.
So, in thinking about the designs that you have created, is there
Mm-hmm.
something that you hated, but the public may have loved?
Hated, but the public would have loved. In relation to
Yeah,
my builds, yo, let me pull up
yes.
my housing snap. 1 second.
Oh my gosh. I
I
hope
know,
you
look.
just remember, put a disclaimer out there for that client and that build, okay?
Hate can be in a specific way but the public loved. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a build that I hated that the public loved because I feel like your your intentions speak very clearly in an artistic endeavor. So if
Mm-hmm.
you hate something, it's going to look awful. And generally
That
if
is
it
true.
looks awful, it's also not going to do well. um so I don't
That's
think
true.
I've had a build that I hate that has
Mm-hmm.
done well, but I have had a build that I think is pretty good. Um, but people really like it for some reason. Like it gets referenced all the time by other people, or people tell me, "Oh, I saw this build and it's like perfect for me," and I'm like, "Oh, y'all really, really like this build. Like I
Do
like
you
it
want to
too, but
post it in
y'all
chat?
really like this build." Hmm?
Do you want to post it in the chat for people to take
Sure. I
a
can
look at
post
it?
this housing snap.
But yeah.
So this is the housing. This is the house. This is one of the houses that, from my perspective, has made me like kind of well known. Because whenever I get a new client, they're like, "I saw this house and it's awesome and it's perfect and I want this," and I'm like, "Oh." And I see people like copying on like Make Place and upload it. I'm like, "Ooh," and I'm just like, "Huh." Like I like this house. I think it's definitely one of my better houses, but I wasn't able to execute everything that I wanted on it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but everyone loves it, and I'm just like, y'all have good taste, but also, huh?
So I
I don't
think
know.
that was probably
The
one
toilet,
of
true. The toilet. It's
I
true. There's
like
a
this
toilet in
build.
this build.
I like this build. And you mentioned the layouts. I think the layouts in this build is actually one of my favorite things about it. More
Oh
so.
yeah, I really like the layout as well. The one thing I wish I could have added, but I ran like because of item slots, I couldn't execute it. Blah blah blah. The in the living room, there's supposed to be windows that only peek up out at the top, but because I ran out
Mm-hmm.
of items, doing 4 rooms is a lot on items, especially in a large like that, and with modern styling. Um, if I added the lights up there, I feel like it would have added a lot to the height of the space, but unfortunately, I had to cut it. So yeah.
And I understand how that feels. But me, I'm the type, I'm kind of stubborn, especially if I really, really want something to work. I'm gonna find a way to keep it Keep it in a build.
The
Especially
crazy thing is this build doesn't even have that much lighting in it. Like the lighting I have in it is like, you know, all those candles that are behind the window that I'm sitting at right now. That build doesn't have any candles in the windows. It's purely just the sun rays carrying it. So if I put
only
candles in
natural.
that build, yeah, that's all natural. So if I had more items, or like if I put the candles in those windows, I would have even less items.
That is true. That is
So
true.
yeah, it's crazy. I don't know.
But that's kind of part of the fun part. So, you know, like just thinking, Morgans, you can't even say that's a mood. You haven't posted a build in like
Wow.
5 years. You can't relate to anything, this conversation we're having right now. I want to ask you, Astra, now that we've
Hmm.
been talking about designing for a while, so I want to ask, actually, before I ask this question, we brought up this point, and neither of us has mentioned before. We talked about item slots. Did you see that there's potential for us to get some additional slots in the upcoming
So much
expansion?
copium. There's so much copium flowing through my veins and through my lungs. It's crazy.
Are you excited for it?
I think, I mean, it depends on how many items they add to each size. I think if they added double all the slots, that's awesome for creativity. It's terrible for commissions. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness, my prices will double if I have to do double the work. Because more items are really weird in terms of their scalability for like commissioned work, because items can be either, depends on the build style, build type, whatever. You can add more clutter if you're going for a maximalist build. Yo, that's awesome. You can add even more things. I'm so excited to add 100 more tabletops for people that are more lighting inclined. With the 7.0 lighting rework, copium, it'll look even better. Yeah. Um, but if it's only like 50 or 100, like if it's 100 per size, I personally think that's perfect. I probably would only like slightly increase my prices, but I think 100 more is basically perfect, because there's been so many instances where I finish a house and like I wish I had like 50 more items even, and I could do even better lighting. I could add even more clutter. I can add even more unique clutter. Like I could put a flower inside of a proper vase, instead of just having the vase just stick out of the ground like the one in front of us right now. I could add like a plate underneath that so it could look even more complex. You know, stuff like that. Um, or even if it's like 100 more in a large, I could probably properly finish out a room, because
That is
sometimes with
true.
I have to stretch out the 400 items to make the bare minimum for a house. And then, man, I wish I had 50 more slots to just add a little bit. Add some ceiling lights. Add some focus lights. Some lights to drive the eye to focus on a certain part of the house. Or, man, they could add 100 slots to every single size, and I'd be happy. I don't need 400 more slots in a large. I
Yeah,
would
I
do a lot of
agree.
crazy things with it, but I'm good.
I
I'd
feel
be
like
stunned too, Ellie.
sometimes, especially with smalls, I think I designed the most smalls um,
Yeah.
in terms of all of my completed commissions. Usually with those are the ones, especially where I'm like, man, if I only had like sometimes not even 20, but like 5 to 10, I feel like that would just be the cherry on top for those designs. So I do think that I'm working towards increasing the item limit is a step in the right direction, right? But now that I think about it, right, since this game is like cross-platform,
Mm-hmm.
everything that they do, they have to think about those console players. And I feel like they're a big part of look, no hate to you if you play on a console, but I'm just saying, I feel like they're a part of the reason that they have to take so long with adding, you know, stuff like this, because it's like, is it gonna be too much pressure on like their little processors or whatever they use, you know?
I don't think it's. PS3 is dead now, so I think the PS4s are fine because honestly, Final Fantasy 14 can run on a toaster laptop, and the toaster laptop is definitely worse than a PS4. I think the
That's
myth
true.
that consoles are holding the game back doesn't really apply anymore to a PS4. When did the PS4 come out? I need to check. PS4 came out. Oh, come on, where's the Wikipedia page?
I'm not sure. I think like sometime recent and recent years,
20,
probably.
2013. Okay, the PS4. Wow, 2013.
Oh
Wait, it's
wow.
been a decade of the PS4? Yeah, that's crazy. Okay.
Wow.
Um, a decade of
That's
the
older than some of my
PS4.
cousins.
That's basically when the game came out, like when 14 came out. Um, and they just killed PS3 like an expansion ago. So, I think I think it's fine. I honestly, there's worse toaster laptops that can run this game than a PS3 than a PS4 can. That's the thing. I don't think the PS I don't think the PS4 is the limiting factor anymore. I also don't own a PS4, so I can't in this game on the PS4, so I can't tell if the game even runs at 60. Like, does it run at a stable 30 when you enter a really complex house? I don't know. I'm not that person to um I'm not the person that can comment on that. But I don't think if you added like another 100 slots, then it's fine. They also have that thing in the options that they added recently where you can have
Mm-hmm.
like adaptable resolution. So if you care about the frame rate dropping really low, you can adjust your. There's an adjustable resolution thing, and there's way and like even on PS4 right now, there's ways to do that so that way it's higher. Um, Also, a thing I've noticed is that the bottleneck for interiors like this, with all the light rays pouring in, it's usually the CPU rather than the GPU in terms of like
True.
PC. So, I think if they added 400 more items to a large, it would be a challenge potentially for a PS4. You know, if you put 400 candles, I think the game's gonna explode anyway
That's
on
gonna be a
any
problem for
computer.
me.
Or if you put like 400 imitation windows and they're all beaming light like right now, they're gonna explode regardless, right?
That is true.
But I think in that case it's like there's nothing you can do. This is a game like housing is a part of the game where a lot of items are not equal. So there's not much you can do if if there's builds that are crashing people's computers, which or PS4s, then you know you probably can't load into it. But I think the game can handle itself. Or they could do what Emerald just said. Limit the amount of items that you can spam. If there's an item that's really egregious, right? They already
I
do that for
feel
like
like
waterfalls.
that might piss off some of the community though. Like if they
They
were to
would,
give,
but game stability is all that matters.
that is true. But what about the stability of the community? The housing community is so large. Cough cough. You know, we're like
I
90% of
mean,
the
yeah,
player base.
the thing is, they can't retroactively kill things. So if you put like 400, for example, candles inside of a thing, and they said, "Oh, we're limiting candles now to 200," they can't remove 200 candles from your thing. It's still there. So if you wanted the 400 candles in your house, you still have 400 candles in your house, I guess. So
Please, designers, don't do that. Please don't. Be
I don't
nice.
know if we already have a limit. If we already do, then 200. I don't know.
I think someone tested with my rectangular partitions at
Hmm.
HGXIV. I think it's like, is it like 90 or 90 something or 70?
If there's
It's
already
around
if
there.
there's already an in-game limit, then it doesn't matter, right? So, but
Yeah, I
if it
think
becomes a big issue of certain items causing more load, more stress, then they add a limit. That's why you can only have two the fake like stage lights. You can only have two of those. You can only
mm-hmm.
have 20 waterfall partitions because you're gonna blow up someone's toaster. It's already in the game. So if like adding 500, let's say they add just 500 item slots in the large, adding 500 showcases to the freaking large blows up your computer. Well, they're just gonna make you not have 500 of them. That's why aquariums have a
True.
maximum
That
limit
is
too,
true.
right? So it's controllable.
That's true. I agree. But speaking of things that's, controllable and limiting, I want to know what are some of your strengths and what are some of your weaknesses when designing.
Um, I think we've touched on some of these before. My strength's probably space assignment or space like valid like assigning space. My another strength would probably be um fairly like a good adaptability and strong communication with my clients probably because I've developed that. Um, weakness. Weakness is probably like I said before, like I don't make complex furnishings. I stick to what I know kind of. Unless like I think of something like really cool. I saw this question before and I think I have more, so just one second. Strengths and weaknesses. Yeah, I think that's pretty much the main thing. I don't make complex furnishings because I try to think on a more macro architectural level because it's what I like. Really trying to think of another weakness because it's kind of shitty to just say I don't have any weaknesses other than the fact that I don't make complex furnishings.
Nothing's wrong with not having any weaknesses. I don't think you've possibly overcome your weaknesses at the point where you are right now. And I do think one of your strengths, like we can see in this build here, is like the layout, and you mentioned that as well. So I do think that's one of your strengths, formulating, the layouts and stuff like that. So nothing's wrong with being able to flex that. You don't have any weaknesses. That's like me being able to flex that I have no allergies.
Okay, I thought of a weakness. I'm actually not that good at I'm not actually not that good at lighting yet. There are people that do lighting way better than I do, and if I really wanted to, I could probably ask them, yo, how do you do your lighting? I'm actually looking really forward to Danny. I know is gonna make a window guide, and I want to see that. I want to see that window guide because Danny's windows have really good lighting, and I want to know how she does it. I know some other people have like really amazing lighting, like Ashen's really good with lighting. Yeah, I'm not that good at lighting. I'm okay at it. I use a lot of highlighting lights to focus the eye towards certain areas, but some Japanese designers, their lighting is insane. And we can learn a lot from them. Like Caesaria's lighting,
Absolutely
amazing.
a goddess.
Every build, amazing. Like I don't know, like I know Nora Rappi and their alt. They deleted their Twitter. I'm not sure why, but their lighting also, their ambiance creation is insane. I'm not actually that good at it, so that's definitely a weakness of mine that I probably could improve. But man, lighting, it's really hard.
I agree. I think to this day, early on, I'm glad that Simia is in the chat right now because she can attest to this. When I first started, I struggled so much with clutter. Not only Simia, but her and Midori helped me so much early on in my early stages of designing, where like I would have like tables, I would have, my kitchens, and I would just not know what tabletop items to put here. I sucked at clutter so bad early on, and honestly, it's all thanks to them. For I remember Midori, she asked me for a screenshot, and she actually went onto that screenshot, and she like drew on like little, scribbles of, okay, well,
Yeah.
you can put the tombstone here, you can put an open book here. And when I added those things, I was just like, oh my God, like how were you just able to see the space and be able to identify what like items would work? And now I still struggle with it a little bit, but not as much as I did back then. I can, just put like some basic things down, or if I need to like, get a little more advanced, I can, mess with a few things. But Midori and Simia, big help early on in me with that weakness.
I'm not that good at clutter either. I had to for like shelf clutter. I think I think like someone like Danny is also really strong at it. I have to. I remember spending a solid 4 hours after I made my shelf, and like a shelf in a build. I don't remember which build. And I was looking through references of like how people cluttered their shelves, and there's so many ways you can orient pieces. And then there's like orienting the pieces, and there's also discovering what pieces can even be used too, right? There's like that skill too. I'm not the strongest. I wouldn't say clutter is my weakness, but it's definitely something I can improve on too. Like clutter's insane. There's a whole other game behind placing clutter effectively, and there's like using clutter also in a build like a build in a housing design to tell a story. I remember one of
Yep.
Ashton's builds. Uh, she made like a little bedroom or something that told a story because of how she put all the clutter around, and I was like, yeah, that's
Smart.
something. That's a really really strong skill to have when you can make something that has a story behind it.
And again, it just goes to show how much thoughts that we as creative people put into the things that we're making. Putting those
Yep.
little, touches. And sometimes it even showcases in commissions. Like, for example, if like a raider approaches you, half of the
Mm.
time they're gonna want their weapon displayed somewhere,
Yep.
So I do think being able to like find a way to, especially I think sometimes with modern designs, it's a little bit harder to fit the weapon depending on which weapon it is. Of course,
Yeah.
there are some that's more aesthetically pleasing than others, and finding a way to like implement that. I remember the first time I had a raider ask me to include those weapons. This was early on. I think this was my second ever commission. My only design before that one was my personal, and
Hmm.
they didn't want one Astra, they didn't want two, they wanted three of them displayed in three different colors. And I was like, oh
Yep.
my gosh, how am I going to make this tie into the bill? But I was able to figure it out. And I think it comes down to like the accenting or the location that you put it in. I think once you're able to like figure out little things like that, it definitely helps a lot.
In a modern build, it's definitely really difficult. I remember Vanzel made a build where he featured all the ultimate weapons. The owner I think was a Dark Knight because he had all the claymores. There was
Yes,
the
I
Uwu
know
one,
which
the
one you're
UCOB
talking
one,
about.
the DSR one, and the T one. And it was like a manor, like an Ishgardian manor type of build, and he put the
Yes.
like color matching effects around it, and I was
He
like,
just
yo, this is the best display room I've ever
mind blown.
seen.
I don't know how he does it. The concepts. Have you seen his Pokemon
I
concepts? I
saw
think
it.
him and
Yep.
someone else was doing
Nina.
Pokemon.
Nina
Nina,
did
yes,
Pokemon.
Nina
Nina did
and
Pokemon.
Van.
The Dugong. The Dugong.
I don't know the way that they create, these things. But I do feel at some point it should be easier for us to display a weapon. I feel like you should be able to place a weapon in your house, ultimates or whatever, of course, because I
Yep.
think all of them would be a little too much. But if you can place it in your house and have it become an item, have it work the same way as food. Some of the interactive foods, right? Obviously, you can't eat it or something, but the moment that you place it down, give us that little confirmation that while it's placed, it's going to interact as like an item. I think that would help, and even more so, make it be a wall-mounted item. You know,
I
kill two
I
birds with
think
one stone.
I think Yoshi P did mention like 2 years ago that he did want to make a housing item that could mount weapons. I just hasn't. I could be dreaming it, but I swear I heard him say it. I would need to find the source again, but it was in Shadowbringers. I swear he wanted to make it so that there was an item that could display weapons easier rather than using mannequins. I swear he said that, but I could be wrong.
I mean, probably.
It was a
I
thing,
think
right?
so.
Yeah, okay, I'm not crazy.
Yeah,
Okay, good. I'm not crazy. Yeah.
I remember that. I think after we
Okay.
got some of the showcases, no, and it wasn't what we were expecting it to be, of course, but
Yeah.
maybe in the future.
Maybe. It would be nice to like you said, toggle. So if you wall mounted the item and then you toggled it to have if it has a glow effect, turn the glow effect on. I think
For
that would be
sure.
really cool. Yeah, imagine leaving. No, but the funny thing is, Emerald, you in like shared housing, you could have, so say like me, like say I didn't clear an ultimate, and one of my friends that cleared an ultimate, and I gave them permissions to put a mannequin down, they could put their ultimate weapon there, and then I could kick them out, and I could have an ultimate weapon in there because it's attached to your
But can
retainer.
you
It's really
use it
weird.
though?
Huh? I can't use
But
it, but it's in my house. It's really
oh my
weird
gosh.
because
Yeah,
you
I
can
do
extract
not
it off of
promote
that
this.
mannequin. You can like when you put an item onto a mannequin, it displays it on the mannequin. But then you can take the item away, but it still displays on the mannequin. That's how because when I cleared my first ultimate, I was like, yo, I want to put the weapon in my house because I earned it. Blah blah blah. Um, so I put it in there, but I was like, oh man, I need to get like a duplicate because I can't I can't glamour with it unless I put it on a glamour plate. But then I was like, wait, can I just take
Uh-huh.
it out? I took it out. I'm like, wait, I have the sword and the sword's still there. Awesome, I can glamour with it. So it's really really
Oh
weird.
my gosh.
It's
Yeah, I
really
do
weird.
not promote adding people to your estates, having them place
They
their
can't take
ultimate
the
weapon.
weapon, but
It doesn't
they can
matter.
display it.
It's the principle. Don't steal from people. Don't use anyone, okay? Treat people with some respect. Don't
I
use
could,
them for their ultimate weapon aesthetics.
I'll be real. I'm gonna be real, Hunk. You could probably find a nicer looking greatsword than an ultimate weapon. Ultimate weapons are just very specific. I don't know, like the. It depends what weapon you're talking about, but yeah.
It's very hit or miss with some of them, I feel like.
Yeah. They are shiny. They're good for G poses sometimes and bad for G poses sometimes.
I feel like even then, we as designers, we wouldn't use the ultimate weapons to display them. We'd like to use a little corner or the glow effect from them in windows or something. Even for like some ambient
Oh,
lighting.
some people are so creative. Like mannequins can add such a depth to housing, but they have that ugly mannequin underneath it. If you could just have the clothes float, we could do so much. Oh,
You know who made them work though?
who?
Midori and her elderly build where she used the names to name like the fire extinguisher and stuff. When she did that, I was like, oh my god, because you can't hide the mannequin names for other people. So if you put it in your build in such a way that it serves purpose, the fire axe, that's what it was. She actually
Oh,
found like a
that.
good use of the mannequins, and people were a little shocked that she just used it like that. This has never been done before. I think that's a good, alternative. Like if you can't, fix it, find a way to make it work, and she definitely did that
I
with
know
that build.
some people you like I think I forget who it was, but someone used like the keys off of a shirt to make the key rack.
Was it Yana,
That,
Yania, or something like that? Yeah,
I
I think
wasn't I don't
so.
remember if it was I might have been Yana. Yeah, Yana made that, and then also Yana used like one of the male robes and then used it on a mannequin and made a robe in the bathroom. Like that build's probably the biggest inspiration for my modern, even though I definitely haven't made anything close to like it. But it's a build. It's still bookmarked in my Twitter, even though they went private. It's amazing. That
Yeah.
build is something else. I never visited it, but it's amazing. Man,
I think there was also one person who I'm not too sure, but it was like a fantasy type build, and it might even be her as well. Where she used the mannequins for that. I think it's like the ill man,
the Meg,
that
yeah, the
robe
Meg
for the
dress.
butterflies,
Yep, yep.
on it. That was another good
Yup.
use of the mannequins.
Oh, it's crazy. It's
And people
so
are like,
good.
what item is that? And I don't know. I wonder how they just think of. I don't know. That's like
Yep.
a whole different layering of thoughts there.
It's crazy. People are crazy.
So I have a more personal question because we're narrowing
Mm-hmm.
towards the end of the podcast. Um,
Yep.
and I want to know, do you believe that it is important to be accepted by others as being creative, or is it just doing what you love enough to justify your work?
I think that's a good question. Thank you. I was hoping we'd go in this direction. I think that if this does not affect your personal well-being, you should always treat a creative endeavor as a passion project and not as something to have people accept you. I think people should accept you regardless. That's just like, going into human rights and stuff, and like, or like, mutually disagreeable, don't hurt each other, blah blah blah. But I think in a creative endeavor, it's better to just do and just create. And if you like it, do it. If you don't like it, stop doing it. Don't don't conform to something that you don't want to conform to, and don't try to. I've chased trends before in housing. I made a really good build once. It got a lot of traction. I was like, yo, I can make I can make lightning in a bottle twice, right? Not quite. Um, and it wasn't like in a negative. Like, it still did well, but it wasn't. I was trying to chase numbers, right? I don't recommend chasing numbers. I recommend just being creative,
Relatable.
doing what you want, not caring what anyone else says. For me and you, we do modern builds a lot. We sometimes do a non-modern build every once in a while. But we like doing modern. Sometimes it's nice to do a different thing, but don't feel pressured to be like, I can never do modern, or I suck because I don't do like fantasy builds or whatever. Because in the end, it's like, you got to do something you like. If you don't do something you like, what's the point? You're just wasting your time, and it's going to show in your creative endeavors. It's like, there's something else I wanted to say with this. Yeah, it's you always want to do stuff that you like to do, as long as it's like, because we're talking about a hobby in a video game, not talking about like actual art commissions that, yo, this artist is literally starving and needs to feed their family type of thing, right? It's a hobby
sure.
first for most people. Some people maybe not, but most people, hobby first. So just keep doing what you're doing. Keep Don't chase numbers. Just keep doing what just grind. People will appreciate your work in one way or another. I know on Twitter, Elon has changed a lot of stuff, changed the algorithm, changed how we view our posts. Um, some people really like focusing on numbers. They get big serotonin numbers, or big serotonin boosts when you see a lot. You're posted really well, a lot of likes and stuff, and that's great. That's awesome. It's always nice to see that. But I mean, if you really liked your build and you posted it and it got no traction, or like your client really likes your build, that's all that should matter. It's like, don't try to go beyond that, in my opinion, because it just doesn't lead you into a really, really good mental state. It just makes you constantly think, oh god, I did really poorly, oh god, I did really well. Yeah, it's not healthy for your creative flow. You just gotta keep do what you do. After my some of my builds have done poorly, but I've mostly chalked that up to subject matter. It just doesn't
True.
hit really well with like housing Twitter. I do modern because I like modern. I don't do it to chase trends. I just genuinely enjoy doing it. But in the end, all that matters is both you are happy with what you made, and your client is happy with what you made. Anyone else that says anything else, or like you think some other people are saying, doesn't really matter, because again, it's like the size queens. Yo, this wasn't made for you. Who cares? I don't care.
Absolutely, I agree. And
Just
and
yeah.
you brought up
You go.
a good point. Because at first, the first time I think I got approached to do, I've noticed the trend, especially in terms of modern. If you use like the more softer aesthetic in terms of like the dyes and
Yeah.
that type of color scheme, they usually perform well.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I didn't have a house, so my only outlet in terms of getting my designs out there is through commissions.
Yeah.
And I think I did like two pastel tone bills, and then Camelius approached me and he mentioned that he wanted like something dark, something modern. My initial thought then, which is it's not good now that I'm looking back at it, but my initial thought I mean, I accepted the commission. I like the style, obviously, but my first thought was, damn, this isn't gonna do well because it's dark. It's not, like everything else that's being posted, that's gaining, the attraction. But
Yeah.
as soon as I completed it, and he really pushed my limits during that commission,
Yeah.
and made me, expand on my creativity so much more. That's Niagara. For those of you who know, that's where I did the, is it the, I can't remember, but it's like a zigzag on the wall,
The
basically,
zigzag, yeah,
using
it's the
the
zigzag.
signboards.
Mhm.
And I love that build. And since then, it's kind of been attached to me for having these more like moody builds that can potentially be attached to like some type of dessert, like chocolate,
Yeah.
for instance. And so I found a love for it, and now it's like my passion. I think my last commission that I did was a bedroom concept, and it used some of those darker tones and aesthetics. And what I found is that you hit the nail on the head. I almost said you hit the hammer on the nail, but when you said that once you do what you enjoy doing, nothing else really matters or bothers you.
Yep.
I feel like, and that's a real nice place to be in, especially as like a creator.
Mm-hmm. It's the best. It's like because you can do something and then be like, I did my best and I really like it and my client really likes it. Nothing else matters. This is awesome. I'm happy. You can go to sleep. You're happy. Nothing matters. You can open your phone on Twitter. You get like two likes. I don't care. I see
For
I
sure.
see the client G pose in it. I'm pogging. I'm like, yeah, he loves it. Woo! Or she loves it. Woo!
And
I don't care.
that's what it comes down to. As long as the person that you're creating it for, as well as yourself, but mostly the person that you're creating it for, because I feel like if you're doing commissions, as long as the person you're designing for loves it more than anything in the world, you've scored. You've hit your goal, and that should be, your goal whenever you're creating. So once you have that, what more do you need? To be honest with you, and that's it.
Once you the metrics are important, sure, to like getting more commissions, but the more important thing I've realized is that word of mouth helps more than any numbers on Twitter does. Word of mouth is insane. You do really well with a person, that person knows people, they talk with other people, you get more people. I'm a crystal based housing designer. I wasn't part of the primal people or the Aether community. I did a build at in my beginning commission stuff. I did a build for a random person. Like this is my second commission that saw my friend's house that I did as a commission. They're like, "Yo, can you do it?" And I did it for them, and they're really happy and whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
then I get some people later. They're like, "Yo, can you do my house?" And I'm like, "Oh, sure. How did you find me?" And they're like, "Oh, I talked to this person that you did your commission for." I'm like, "Oh."
Oh, I
And then
love
it just
that.
kept snowballing, and people on Crystal specifically, they talk to each other. Crystal people talk a lot, and it's crazy. Like I've done a house for one of the largest club owners on Crystal on Coworld. I've had people in high end rating groups want to commission me on Crystal. Like word of mouth is more valuable than any likes and retweets and stuff. Like it's insane. It's crazy.
100%. And I agree with that. I think people tend to lose sight of that sometimes. So it's good to be reminded. And you guys, we have living proof right now. You know, Astra just, gave a little bit of a testimony right there. And it's happened for me as well, so very, very thankful for that. So I have just a few more closing questions for you, maybe
Yep.
about three. So,
Yep.
what's something that you wish you knew now that you didn't when you first started?
Ooh, good question. Um, we've kind of touched on this already a little bit. These topics all come together.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've said it before, but like seeking approval, so like chasing numbers doesn't really help.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
100% agree.
only people that matter are yourself. You're happy with the build. You're not happy with the build, then it's not good. But if you're happy with the build, the client's happy with the build, You are awesome. You feel great no matter what. When I started out, though, I didn't really seek numbers either. Until midway through my housing career, and then I realized there was no point, so then I stopped doing it anyway. But just trying to, instead of chasing, maybe chasing numbers isn't the exact same right thing, but getting a sense of self satisfaction is the absolute most important thing, I think, no matter what. And another thing that I wish I knew is that um, it's kind of tangential, but no matter what anyone says, whether it's an insult or something to you, or an offhanded comment, so even the size queen stuff type of stuff, your creativity always stems from your own hard work, your talents, and your knowledge. A lot of people that interact with housing but don't do housing think that if you have something like a tool, you can just do whatever, you can make whatever, you can. But no, that's not true, because you put in the work to expand your knowledge base, to understand what you can do in FF14 housing, like how to float, how certain items interact, blah blah blah, and that's all from your own hard work. And if you're ever feeling self-doubt, you have to know that you accumulated this knowledge for your own benefit and for the benefit of people you make houses for. So doesn't matter what you do, it's all that matters is what you make.
For sure. I 100% agree with that. I think for me now, I think I'd also give them that same advice, because I feel like early on, you kind of fall into that trap of there's a certain standard that I have to meet or uphold
Mhm.
in terms of being successful or whatever the case may be. And that can limit us and put unnecessary stress and pressure where it's not needed. And I've seen within my time here in the community, a lot of people have left the community, and this is not just limited to housing. I'm quote unquote involved in the GPOs community as well. I tell myself
Yeah.
that I do 3 GPOs a year, so I can continue to say that I'm a GPOser as well. But I've seen people in both communities fall into that trap, and then because they cannot uphold that standard, they leave. And no one likes to see fresh people with so much talent and potential just, not being able to fully reach their maximum point as a creator. So definitely do think that's my number one advice that I would give to anyone that's starting out.
Yeah, I saw a post fairly recently where the person was like, it doesn't matter if you post your thing and you only get 2 likes on Twitter. The 2 people that liked it, it affected them somehow and whatever. And in Twitter, it's very much you see, for example, oh, my tweet got 1K 10K views or whatever, and but I only have 100 likes or less, or 50 likes or whatever. But the thing is that not everyone that sees your stuff interacts with it. They see it and they might be like, oh, that's cool or whatever, but they might not like it, they might not retweet it, or they might not comment. It doesn't really matter, they saw it. I've had a lot of people in the last year, because I haven't interacted with the housing community. I kind of just make my stuff and then post it and then be like, cool, and then my client's happy and I'm happy and blah blah blah. I don't actually interact with the housing community that much, but I've had people in the last year DM me and be like, whoa, your house is so cool, your designs are so awesome, really good job, or I was inspired by your housing, I'm going to use that as a reference, is that okay? And sometimes they're the people that like and retweet and comment, but sometimes they're not. They're just straight up people that don't. And they're, you impact a lot more people than you think you do. There's not always a visual metric for who you impact.
100%.
And you have to keep that in mind sometimes.
Because I always like to mention that you have a lot of silent appreciators as well. I find me myself, I'm one of them. I may not have always reach out, but just seeing people's work. Sometimes I'll, save the link and I'll share it to some, of my friends and we'll talk about it. And that's like just stopping at us, but they can share it to other people. And I don't know, I
Yeah.
feel like I'm in some like different FC discords, and they usually have like a housing channel, and they would like post like links of builds and just, be mind blown about some of the things that people are creating. And sometimes it's not just those builds that gets like the upper hundreds or thousands. Sometimes it's those that people may not deem themselves as a successful build, or like a flop or something. But no,
Yeah.
the general player base and people just looking can be inspired by your work. So
Yeah.
definitely
Something to
consider
keep in
that.
mind.
Yeah, for sure. But speaking of things to keep in mind, just gonna end off this interview segment here with one last question, right? And I want
Mm-hmm.
to know if there's anyone that you'd like to know more about, to potentially be a guest here on the Creative Minds podcast.
My peers are awesome. I have a lot of really cool. There's a lot of really cool housing people. Like I said before, Danny is amazing with lighting. I would love to see here. Morgan's right next to us. Always a
Mm-hmm.
good, probably a good chat there. Roast him for like 3 hours straight. Mia with how she does Japanese builds, good perspective.
For sure.
Vanzel's like the absolute king of style variants. I'd love to hear how he goes about that. That's like the biggest thing I respect about him is like he can do 5 billion different styles and they all look good. It's insane. How does he do this? Um, yeah, it's like those peers. Yeah, there's a lot of people. I think getting the insight of creative processes from different people. For example, for me, it was macro into micro is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing how other people do stuff or like explain how they do stuff and how um, how they build is really insightful for even really complex builders and even new people. I think this is really cool for new people. Maybe they can try the process that another person tries, see if it works for them. If it works for them, great. It's great.
A lot
So
for
much
new
learning. It's just like
adventures
artists from
there.
learning from each other. It's like artists learning from
Mm-hmm.
each other. Same thing. I think those
For
people
sure.
would be great guests.
I agree. I'm not gonna confirm or deny, anyone from that list. You guys will just have to stay tuned to see. But I agree. I think there's so many different avenues to explore when it comes to the creative community and the creative side of 14. And
Hmm.
yeah, that's why I kind of created this podcast, and just dive a little bit more into the minds and make y'all the focus. Sometimes, yes, you post your bills, but who really is Astra? People
Yo,
may
you'll
not
never
know
find out.
that.
You won't find out
No,
unless you hang out on the mostly housing server. That's the only server I'm in.
and that's like the thing. Sometimes, as creatives, we may seem like unapproachable, or that we don't share like the same sentiments, or we can't come across as not relatable. And I just want to help bridge that gap and show people that that's like a wrong perspective. We're all human. We all have some thought processes, and
Hmm.
yeah, we have our own experience, our views, and I'm happy to have not only you, but some of the future guests that's going to be appearing on the podcast. Um, but yeah, that's going to bring us to the end of episode 1. How do you feel, Astra? How are you feeling at the end of the episode?
I feel like I could talk for another 3 hours, but I need water.
Same, same.
uh,
For sure,
yeah,
for
it was
sure.
a good podcast.
I agree. And I,
It's good.
I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule, to just
Hmm.
share a few hours here with us. And on a Saturday as well. That's the day after a Friday. Saturday is when people are looking to just relax and just get into some leisure time. So I do want to thank you. It means the world to me for having you on here to not only be the debut guest, but to kind of, set the tone of the podcast. And I really, really sincerely appreciate that. Let me fan out a little bit. I'm a huge fan. I've always adored your work. you know, so just having you on here is very surreal to me. And I think everyone who's looking, who's stopped in, can also attest to that and appreciate that. You're an incredible designer. I look forward to seeing some more of your work. Spoil me with the work in progress pics. Thank you in advance. I also want to say thank you to the people who's watching, those who came in game and stopped by. I appreciate each and every one of you. This really wouldn't be possible without your interest and your enthusiasm, your support. That means the world to me. And yeah, I really, really want to say thank you, guys. I can potentially reveal the guest for the next episode, but I'm gonna have y'all waiting. I'm gonna have y'all waiting a little bit on the official announcement. So, um, thank you guys so much for tuning in to the Creative
20, 30
Minds
people?
podcast.
That's insane. That's a lot of people.
Exactly, right? Can't imagine people stuck around so long. So thank you guys. Thank you, Astra. If you have any closing remarks, y'all follow Astra. Here's his Twitter. follow. Spam in the chat.
Only remark I have is I thank you for having me. I was not expecting to be the first person. When I think about who would be good to talk to about housing, I wouldn't think it would be me because I say nothing on Twitter. I just post houses and cats. I know that we kind of talk a little bit, and you know that I'm a very opinionated person, so I guess maybe that's probably why. But yeah, no, it was really fun. If you ever need more people or to just talk for 3 hours, 2.5 hours, I'm always down if I have the time.
I'm definitely keeping that in mind.
I hope people in chat and people that watched have got a lot of insight from me. Honestly, if you wanna talk, just talk to me and I'll say something. I generally reply to people. Yeah, pretty much it. Thank you.
Awesome. It's my pleasure to have you on here. And again, thank you to everyone who tuned in. Appreciate you guys so much. And that is going to be it for episode 1 of the Creative Minds podcast. We do air every first and third Saturday of the month. The only time that it's going to be consistent is for the first 3 episodes, since I did want to start this month. So the schedule is going to line up as the weeks go by. So definitely stay tuned for that. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll catch you next time. Good night, y'all.
Yep. Good night.